Trump's victory isn't merely an electoral setback for the Washington establishment. It has been a psychological shock, and it's seen as an existential threat. Journalist Greenwald recently wrote in The Intercept that the American deep state of government agencies and military intelligence has, in effect, gone to war with Donald Trump, and the media and the Democratic Party, he says, have been happy to tag along with that. Mr. Greenwald joins us tonight from Rio de Janeiro. Glenn, thanks a lot for joining us. I just want to restate for our viewers who may not know you are not a Trump supporter, and you say that pretty explicitly in this piece you wrote yesterday, but you watched this dossier leak into the American media, and your immediate response, as you wrote in your piece, was, this comes from the American intelligence community, and here's why, and I want to put this on the screen. Their most valuable instrument is the U.S. media, much of which reflexively reveres, serves, believes, and sides with hidden intelligence officials. And Democrats, still reeling from their unexpected and traumatic election loss, as well as their systemic collapse of their party, seemingly divorced further and further from reason with each passing day, are willing, eager, to embrace any claim, cheer any tactic, align with any villain, regardless of how unsupported, tawdry, and damaging those behaviors might be. Boy, that is quite an indictment.
I think it's warranted. I mean, you see Democrats at this point, even liberals, more or less openly calling for and cheering for the intervention of the CIA, the intelligence community, the overall deep state, hoping that because they failed to do so, that this unelected faction in Washington will undermine and subvert and destroy the legitimacy of Donald Trump's presidency before he's even inaugurated. And I think what you're seeing is actually quite dangerous. There really is, at this point, obvious open warfare between this unelected but very powerful faction that resides in Washington and sees presidents come and go on the one hand, and the person that the American democracy elected to be the president on the other, who's supposed to be its chief executive. And there's clearly extreme conflict and a lot of subversion taking place.
So you write correctly, I think, that the CIA in particular was openly against Trump going back a full year. Why is that, do you think? Why did they oppose Trump?
I think there are a lot of reasons. I think the #1 foreign policy priority of the CIA over the last 4 to 5 years has been the proxy war they're waging in Syria to remove Bashar al-Assad, and Hillary Clinton was quite critical of Obama for constraining them. She wanted to escalate that war, to unleash the CIA, to impose a no-fly zone in Syria to confront Russia, whereas Trump took the exact opposite position. He said we have no business in Syria trying to change the government. We ought to let Russia and Assad go free and killing ISIS and al-Qaeda and whoever else they want to kill. He was a threat to the CIA's primary institutional priority of regime change in Syria. Beyond that, Clinton wanted a much more confrontational and belligerent posture toward Moscow, which the CIA has been acrimonious with for decades, whereas Trump wanted better relations. I think they viewed Trump as a threat to their institutional preeminence, to their ability to get their agenda imposed on Washington.
Now, what's chilling about this, as you point out pretty extensively in this piece, which I would definitely recommend to our viewers, is that there are a lot of ways to oppose Trump if you disagree with him, and you recommend some of them because you oppose Trump. But this way is an illegitimate way to oppose a president and, in fact, a threat to our system, if you could explain what you meant.
Sure. I mean, if you go back, 6 decades when Dwight Eisenhower, no radical he, a five-star general, a 2-term Republican president, he left office and he had one chance to tell the American people what he thought they needed to know as he was riding off into the sunset. And he said the greatest danger we face as a democracy is this faction of military and industrial power, unelected, but permanently exerting power in Washington. And they're becoming more powerful than Democratic leaders. It almost doesn't matter what choices we as American citizens make. And I think that actually in the election, what you saw was this kind of framework where there was a proxy war, where you had factions within the FBI very supportive of Donald Trump, undermining Hillary Clinton's candidacy in several different ways, and then you had the CIA itself very strongly behind Hillary Clinton. And I think it is quite dangerous if we start thinking about submitting to rule by these unelected, dark, deep state overlords. I think it's the antithesis of democracy.
Yes, and it's also the story of the rest of the world, of many other countries. You live abroad, and you've seen it, I'm sure, in other places. This is the story of the Middle East, for example, where the real power resides in the military and the intelligence services.
Yeah, I mean, there's, obviously the United States, part of its foreign policy for many decades has been, whenever it dislikes a certain government, including an unelected one, is to empower the military, empower the intelligence agencies within that country to remove that government, impose their own policies. That is something that as Americans we all ought to be extremely worried about. And one of the reasons I'm so worried is because I do think there are things Donald Trump is going to do that are quite bad, and I want to see Democrats focus on those in a cogent, reasoned way and not cheer and root for the CIA to use their dirty tactics to undermine the president that just got elected.
I think that's an entirely fair point. Finally, why is it that the press, which you would think, after all we've seen in the past couple of decades, if not generations, is so willing, indeed eager to believe whatever they are fed by anonymous intelligence sources?
So I know it's an orthodox belief that the media in the United States and organs like the New York Times are liberal, and in a lot of ways they may be, but whenever it comes to national security issues, especially in the post 9/11 era, although before that too, you see this incredibly close relationship between the media and the intelligence agency. The New York Times had to apologize for laundering anonymous claims that helped sell the Iraq War during the Bush presidency. There's this almost fear, this institutional fear of challenging or questioning people who have medals on their chest, people who work in the CIA for fear of being unpatriotic or looking unpatriotic. And they also get a lot of benefits when they serve their agenda. They get scoops, they get secrets, they get access. And I think a lot of that is what you're seeing, on top of the fact that the media has been aligned against Trump and will side with anybody who wants to subvert him, including the CIA.
But when they empower the unelected to control our democracy, they're playing with fire. I agree with that. It's a great piece. Thank you, Glenn Greenwald, for coming on tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker. Appreciate it.